Thank you, Shirin, for that nice introduction. Yes, I have it right here. Okay, great. And thank you to the organization and the committee for this opportunity to visit with you and to discuss some things that I find I'm developing a passion for and feel very strongly about. I'd like to acknowledge my co-author, Lucy Myers. She's the artist. Okay, so that brings legitimacy to the whole endeavor, right? Because now I have an artist on the slide with me, so that's a good thing. But she and I put this paper together, and we'd like to share some thoughts with you about this topic. I guess to lay the foundation for eventually how museums can play a role in this educational process, I'd like to just go over a few basic premises, namely that technology, of course, we know is part of everything that we do, everything that we say. It's everywhere, and as such, it will play and does play an important part in how society evolves. And I believe that in order for everyone, especially the children that we've spoken about as they're growing up, to be a contributing member of society now and in the future, I believe that everyone should be technically literate, at least at some level, okay? And why is this? Well, according to Professor Maria Klawe, technology affects everything that we do. I mean, it starts at birth with hospitals and if there's an emergency situation that needs to be taken care of. At schools, it affects how we learn and what we do. And also at work, how it is that we work and interact with each other. This concept of a 24-hour business day is becoming more and more a reality, where a project can be started in Europe, work on for 8 hours. The engineers in Europe hand it over to somebody in the US. They work on it for 8 hours. They hand it over to somebody in India or China. They work on it for 8 hours. And when it comes back to that person in Europe, 24 hours later, it's already had 2 full days of work added to it. Now, there's some tricky negotiation and understanding that has to happen. But the idea is that we're no longer limited by our normal 8 working hours per day. And also well, quite frankly, in death, technology plays a part. You can send your loved one's ashes to space for a mere $2,000 US. I mean, so it is everywhere and everything that we do. Why is technology important? Because it evolves so quickly. All you have to do is take a look at the power of the computer that's either in your pocket or your purse or your wallet or somewhere. This is a computer, okay? And it's so much stronger than what we used when I was growing up many years ago. And it's just amazing what I can do with these things now. I love this picture. You know, it's a great picture. Because not only is it everywhere and growing quickly, it has a tremendous effect on everything and on everybody. And I use this example, migration is so much easier and cheaper now. Sure, airfare is expensive, I know that, but you couldn't do that, what you do now 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Transportation, migration, of course, not only people, but diseases, is now so much easier than it was 40, 50 years ago. Okay, so obviously technology is an important part of what it is that we're doing. And finally, why is a fundamental level of technological education important for everybody? Is because we are going to have managers and leaders and decision makers that are going to be making decisions about technological issues in the future. And wouldn't it be nice if they were technologically trained? I don't know who is going to be the next governor, the next mayor, councilman. And so it's important that everybody at some level understands something about technology. You know, these photos are some of the issues that are going on here in Cayman, of course, but they apply, I think, to many of the islands. Technology is going to decide what islands, what nations, what everybody does when they're building new roads, when they're deciding what to do with their garbage, when they're upgrading and modernizing airport facilities. These are all public projects with public monies that have to be decided by individuals that we need to trust that they are technologically competent so that they can make these decisions, okay? And so how do we do that? How do we educate our youth, each other? And it is especially what I'm concerned about is our youth, because it is from our youth that our future leaders will come, whom we will trust to make the correct decisions. Okay? Now, of course, Nelson Mandela, excellent quote, education is one. And in the paper that we'll be providing, we talk about various ways that universities can do that, okay? And that's fine. We kind of expect universities and schools to do that. But what role, and now we'll bring this to the topic of the conference, what role do museums play? And I'm not talking about museums that are specifically themed for technology, like we have the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. Okay, if you ever get a chance to visit Chicago, a great museum that highlights and showcases technology, all right? That's fine. They have that role, they have that mission, and I think they do a great job. But I think other museums, other galleries, art museums can also play a part, okay? And so that's what I'm going to discuss for the next few minutes. How can the more, I guess, traditional museums, if you want to call them, play a part, whether it's through displays or through outreach programs or through other activities, okay? So that's what we're going to be talking about. I was talking about this with my wife the other night, and she said, you got to have a good tagline, okay? And so this is the fancy way of saying it, but the real point here is art makes education fun. Art makes engineering fun, okay? You know, and it was like, you can say the fancy words, but really, art and engineering, art and technology, they've been around together. In fact, some of the early definitions of technology and engineering involve the word art, okay? So they are connected for many, many years. But what I'd like to discuss for a few minutes is how can we showcase technology through art, and how can we use art, how can we then use technology, showcase technology through art and showcase art through technology. It goes both ways, is the idea. Okay. So again, in Chicago, I'm going to cite some examples of art that's out there. And how now, if we think about this, how can we use these examples to teach technology? Because wouldn't it be cool if museums, while they're doing all these great artwork, exhibits and displays, well, why don't we kind of showcase technology at the same time? Showcase engineering at the same time. Discuss engineering. And I saw this out there, one of the auction items, and right away, oh, my brain just did somersaults. I don't want to touch that anymore because I'm done. I mean, but it's not magic, okay? There are certain physical principles, engineering, scientific principles at play here that makes this work. There's no glue, and well, okay, I'm like a magician, right? There are no strings holding this up, you know. I pull the curtain here, you know. There's nothing holding it up. That is an example of science, technology at work. Oh, and by the way, there's a really cool painting on it too. All right, we can't forget about that. So here's an example of art and technology working hand in hand. So at the same time as you are drawing this painting or you're displaying this painting and this artifact, why not have a little bit of a side display that says, oh, by the way, here are the physics principles involved that make it work, all right? So you start to engage students, young people, and even perhaps a little older people in thinking about the technological aspects involved. So this is an art display in Chicago. Also, I've spent some time in Chicago, so some of these pictures are going to be from Chicago. In Millennium Park. This is a 50-foot video display, and it changes all the time, of people. Sometimes you'll see water coming right out of there, okay, on the hot days. So, you know, the kids, they run around, and it's interactive, okay? What a great way not only to display an artistic endeavor that we are all one, the faces, they're people, everybody's part of this planet, but also now let's talk a little bit about the technology behind this, the pixels, the computer screens, the energy involved. By the way, energy is not cheap, right? Okay, I remember when I was here, on sabbatical, the energy bills were, well, they were, shall we say, to be reckoned with. So, all of a sudden the thermostat went up from, okay, so I'm American, so I like things at 68, right? Well, things rose quickly to the upper 70s pretty soon in our house, all right? So, that's okay. It's a great opportunity to discuss the electronic part of technology. This is the Statue of Liberty, famous in New York City. And, well, we can talk about many different things here related to science and technology. Why is it green? Nobody painted it green, all right? That's a scientific process that made it green. She looks like she's alive, okay, the way it's done. But if you go inside, this is what she looks like inside. It's a wonder of structural analysis and structural engineering. All right, so again, you talk about the beauty and the grace and the flow of the sculpture, but you can also at the same time discuss the engineering aspect of your project. So again, maybe there are some students in the group of that you're working with that's on the bus tour, that's looking at it, it's all about the art and the sculpture and the history and all the heritage and all that's great. But there might be some students in there that are like, well, probably a lot of students that are doing that, but all of a sudden if you talk about the engineering involved and you talk about the technology involved, you may pique interest in a few, and so why not do that? Okay, laser light shows, okay? So if you've ever spent any time in a planetarium, they're great, they're creative, they're mesmerizing, they can be used for entertainment, they can be used for advertising. What about the technology behind the laser? Star Wars movies notwithstanding, I mean, we don't have lightsabers yet, although I built a dozen or more of them with my kids as they were growing up. They wanted to build a lightsaber, so we went to the hardware store and we got sticks and we painted sticks and we made lightsabers. But, we don't have that technology yet, but will we? Can we? Should we? I don't know. Why not discuss the technology behind what a laser means, what it does, how's it started, where's it used, what else can you do with it? This is a building facade in Linz, Austria, and these are fake. These are not real windows. These are solar panels that can be tuned to display whatever you want to display. And so, an empty wall, well, it looks a lot better when there are windows there, right? But why not, you can also create art, you can, again, advertising. Here, they're not just hanging there with Velcro. They're actually tunable, rotatable solar panels, solar cells. Again, talk about energy, talk about recycling, talk about alternative energy methods, reusable, renewable energy, okay? And the structure involved, the engineering involved. So not only is it cool from an engineering perspective, but when you start talking about recycling and renewable energy, all of a sudden, now is when you bring in the politicians, now is when you bring in the decision makers to get them involved, to show them that this is an important topic as well. And I'm a structural engineer by background, if you will. This is the Salgino-Tobel Bridge, designed by Robert Maillard in Switzerland, and this is a big hole. How they built that is another story, okay? But this is now a beautiful, this is considered one of the most beautiful bridges in the world. When was the last time you thought about something that's an engineering marvel? So for the first few, those were artistic marvels that showcased and that can be used to showcase engineering. Now we can take an engineering marvel and show how it can be beautiful at the same time. Okay? So again, the relationship between art and technology can be discussed. This is a project going on in Los Angeles, the 6th Avenue Bridge. This must be, I don't know when this is, because this road here almost never has so few cars on it. Must be artistic. There's another artistic license, right? It would just sort of Photoshop out some of the cars. But we are now coming back to the idea. Artists are very familiar and live in the world of juried competitions. Okay? Engineers typically do not. It's what works. It's what's cheapest. Someplace between the two of them is the selection process. Well, in the early 1900s, engineers, Robert Maillard, used to design those bridges through juried competitions. And we've kind of lost that. And we're bringing it back a little bit right now, okay? So what can we do here? What can we do on the islands? Well, recycled materials as art is always a big thing. These are CDs, okay? Why not, CDs apparently are really good fish scales, okay? And you'll see that in a lot of places. Why not take what washes up on the shore and make art out of it? Where's the education there? Well, obviously, we have a problem. We may have a problem, all right? Let's bring it to the attention of the people in charge, the people in mind. Look at all the art that we made from the stuff that washes up on the shore that you guys haven't figured out a way how to clean up yet, okay? Well, the artists figured it out. They cleaned it up for you. These are actually pollution levels by a device that a Russian invented that measures pollution along the streets, and he figured out a way how to translate it into color. You know, that's actually kind of cool. Fractals, okay? That's a way to teach math. Okay, fractal is a specific mathematical construct. Computers, mathematics. Sure, it's beautiful, and you can have a whole wall of fractal art, and you can spend time looking at the figure-ground relationship and all this kind of good stuff, but why not talk about the math that went into it at the same time? Graphic arts, okay? You can have generations sitting together in the same room in a museum talking about, well, when I did graphic arts for the festivals, they kind of looked like this, and you got the young kids today putting out stuff that looks like this. Why not have a historical retrospective of the various aspects of graphical arts in your particular island, in your particular country? This is for those who like to read. You know, as artists, we look at pictures a lot, so okay, I had a lot of pictures up there now. Now, you can read this, okay? So this is for the reading people in the audience. Why not start an exhibit at a museum with a joint panel of an artist and a technologist? This, for example. This is great. This would be a great example of an artist that would sit together with an engineer and talk about, well, you know, I painted this and I kind of cut it at 45 degrees and I stuck a bottle in there and it worked. Wow, that was cool. Okay, well, now you may have the engineer come inside and say, well, now this is cool because, you know, the moment arm and the pivot point and the reaction, the equilibrium, and all this works together. Oh, and by the way, you know, we also use these concepts when we design these kinds of things. Okay, so you can have a panel discussion at the beginning of an exhibit. And at the end of the exhibit, bring back two different people and then listen to the audience and see what worked and what didn't work. You can get feedback and you talk about these kinds of things. If you've ever traveled to the southwest of the United States, you're familiar with this thing called a cactus. Of course, you got cactuses everywhere, but this is a specific kind that only grows in the southeast in a very narrow band in the southeast called a saguaro cactus, okay? That's not a cactus. That's not real. That's a cell phone tower. Okay? Camouflage art is what it's called. Now, you're thinking, okay, well, we have cell phone towers and they're all up and down the road here, and boy, they're ugly, okay? So what can we do with them? Well, this is the Caribbean, right, folks? You know, you can do things like that. People do this. I think this is from LA, because they also have palm trees in LA. I don't know how they got palm trees in LA, but that's a little before my time. But you can do things like this. So you can have competitions, you know, things that are important for technology. And here's where you talk about the technology. Will it work? What kind of materials can surround those little receptors out there? What won't work? What will work? What's a microwave? What's a cell phone? How does a cell phone work? I don't know. It's magic as far as I'm concerned. But this is the policy. When you start talking about these kinds of things with policymakers, you get them thinking about, well, okay, so we can't only think about putting up a cell phone tower because that person over there is willing to donate their land. And all you need is about 9 square meters, maybe something like that. And you can put a cell phone tower up there, right in the middle of Bodentown or Georgetown, wherever you live, and that's going to be a major eyesore. Okay, what can we do now? Okay, so not only do you bid the project to build the cell phone tower, but included in that project, you should also include some way of making it less of an eyesore. And it just makes life a little more pleasant. This is a float from a museum in the Rose Parade that we have out in California every now and again. And Yeah, okay, sure. You know, you all have parades, you may not have floats like this, but why not involve your students in, let's say, coursework, create coursework, courses, artists in residence that can come and work with your students and explain to them, not only we got to make it look cool and it's got to last for, you know, Junkanoo or Badabano or whatever, but this is how it works. These are the weights involved. These flower petals, you know, if you lift the flower petal, it's, you know, try lifting 1,000 flower petals, okay? It's not as simple as you might think it is. It's actually very heavy, you know? Plants are heavy. How do you design a float? What's the structural involved? What's the, so you basically get the artwork going at the same time as you talk about the technology. And ultimately, where am I going with all this? Well, ultimately, we're gonna have educated leaders, educated decision makers, and I think society will be better served as a whole, not only because there will be more beautiful things to look at, but because you're now going to have people out there that are going to be trained a little bit more, maybe, in the art of engineering, who can then make those decisions and have some technical training behind them so that you can then trust those decisions. All right? So that is what I wanted to visit with you for a little bit today, and I'll be happy to answer questions if I have time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schoenberg. I probably would not have stopped this presentation if it went on longer. It's very, very interesting. I like this presentation a lot because STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we really have been having issues in the education sector with these particular issues. And so I think this is just a very, very good way of showcasing that. I'm looking forward to your paper, by the way. I'll edit it myself. Natalie. Oh, yes. We have two, so.
Well, firstly, a very big thank you. That was awesome, and so many ideas. I have seen those palm trees in action, and they do actually kind of work. So I love the connection there between art and technology, just in our environment, and public art is something that we should be seeing a lot more out there in our communities. And this was really just a comment because I think we met last year when you were here with STEM, and you are going to be presenting, if anyone is staying in Cayman, there's STEM conferences later this week. Of course, there's STEAM now that includes the arts, which is really important.
Yes.
But we did an exhibition called Luminescent Forms, and it was all about this idea of really science rather than technology directly, but art and science. And we'd invited a German structural engineer that was photographing Foraminifera. Took me a very long time to learn how to say that. And these single-celled organisms that make up the majority of our oceans. And he'd done this all around the world, but also in Cayman. And we paired him with a local glass artist, Davin Ebanks, and created this incredible exhibition with his forms on the wall and then Davin's reinterpretations. But we made a pop-up sand lab. And we had a series of microscopes and lots of scientific information about the journey of these organisms. And we're able to partner with the Department of Environment to talk about recycling, the warming of the seas, coral bleaching. And I think it was one of the most successful education school connections that the gallery's ever done. And I just wanted to share that as a project that, you know, it does really work. And it's a great opportunity for us to be able to teach subjects outside of our immediate museum missions.
Cool.
So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for all those fascinating examples. Another example I wanted to mention, maybe if you're not aware, but also to the delegates here, is the Science Gallery in Dublin, who are doing some fascinating work, and they have a really strong media presence as well, so you can check out their previous projects. One of my favorites is when they do a lot with biology. One of my favorites is when they had petri dishes, and everyone could come in and leave a kiss. And sort of they grew over over time to become this kind of lovable but also really disgusting wall. But they have a ton of things on their site, so you can look at them for inspiration, for ideas. Thank you again.
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation because I am very much like I was a painter when I started artwork and I stick with my traditional forms, and I've had a lot of difficulty appreciating technology in terms of the fact that I can't do anything more than probably turn on and off my laptop because it doesn't agree with me. But it's taking years of my professors trying to convince me like, no, it's good. But I mean, in that presentation, I like the comparisons you gave because it was a lot more simplified for me, which I think is the trouble today of being able to just easily like technology when you can't necessarily coordinate with it. So I want to say thank you for that. And also, I'm from Chicago, so I love the towers at Millennium Park. And I think the thing that fascinates me about them, I got to actually go to a talk by the guy whose name I'm sorry I cannot pronounce at all, but he made those, he designed them, and he's about 27. And he is now, I think, a multimillionaire who, I think he created those in his last year at my school that I went to. And now he has this entire museum just on technology and art combined. And it's got these fantastic pieces, and I think it's in Korea somewhere. I know that's not very helpful information, but he was expanding on the ideas that you presented, and I just really want to say thank you for reiterating those again. I think it's really important, especially for college students and people in museums today who are already professionals to really look into. So thank you.
Cool. And go Cubs, right? Yeah.
Socks, white socks.
Oh, socks. You're a Southsider. Okay.
I really liked your presentation as well. I think you're a comedian on the side, you must be. But there's two things. One, I had the privilege of seeing an artist named Jason Bruges, I think, and he does art and technology, and I think because I went to the lecture, I understood his pieces, but I don't know how translatable they are in public because he does a lot of public art. So he had a light piece, you can look up his website, but he had a light piece that tracked the movement of elevators through the day.
There you go.
And then at night,
yeah.
it really tracked how people moved through. And then he does things on the streets, I think, that looks at traffic or the water levels, and then it shows up in his artwork at night. But it was really cool, but I think because it's public art, I don't know how evident it necessarily was to the public. The second thing is I'm one of the Canadians. So I'm from Toronto, and I think linking back to, we have this new policy that the city put in for developers that I think it's called Section 37. So anytime they build a new building in Toronto, and there's a lot of development there, which I think would be good for all the cultural plans that are happening, they have to put in a percentage of their fees to either public art or libraries or community
cool.
centers or something like that. And so it's been something we've been looking into and interested in, but being in more projects, I know there's loopholes, unfortunately, but kind of interesting because there's been a lot more art coming up in Toronto because of that.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That is neat. Good.
Okay, I'm going to take two questions from this side. So please go ahead.
Okay. Oh, Schoenberg, there's something, I mean, since we're addressing, Caribbean cultural practitioners, that I think maybe you could marry the concept of bringing in the technology piece of it with the art and culture and history. And that is that in the Caribbean, we have several islands that either had or still have a tradition of boat building. And that integrates very much aesthetic along with the functional. And I just think, just an idea out here. I'm a professional engineer myself, so I appreciate from that angle. But if we, as cultural practitioners, can realize this thing that we have among us, right here, indigenous to the region, as to how we can then celebrate those things and bring to the public's mind both the confluence of the fact that there is a lot of pretty sharp engineering that goes into them, but to make something that is beautiful, it works of art,
Right.
these things.
I think that's a great example. I mean, just the idea. Okay, so maybe to make it kind of simple, when I go in the water, I sink. Okay. How do those boats? Okay, boats. How do the boats float? How do those ships float? I mean, surely there's got to be a kid out there that's wondering, how do we make metal float? All right, and so that's a great example, a great way to introduce the physics involved. Yes, good.
I was going to piggyback on both of those comments. the whole idea of urban revitalization and bringing together the creative class with folks who are trying to, recreate or upgrade certain urban environments. And so on a very basic level, you think of like the landscape artist, but who are creating these, raised bed, sites to help people have access to certain, produce, right? And also with our museum, I'm really excited about the fact that we actually have what I call it a skin that wraps around the museum. But it is inspired by the artistry of the blacksmiths in Louisiana and South Carolina. But the design was based on, and I hope I'm saying this right, an algorithm that actually brought the past and connected it with the present. And so things like that, even thinking about girls coding and stuff like that, things like that made me think of how you marry, the arts with science and technology.
Yeah, cool. That's great. Good, good, good. Okay. And next person up, be careful of that thing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schoenberg.